Preservation policies have two main objectives: providing a context for future generations for understanding the data and managing the flow of technology through the archives. We use the word archive to represent the infrastructure that supports preservation and the word archives to represent the records stored in the archive. There are four classes of preservation systems that differ in how they define preservation requirements. These are diplomatics, the International Standard Archival Description ISADG, digital libraries, and the records continuum model. The diplomatics model assumes records are held forever. An example record is a treaty between two governments or an official government communique. The records that are deposited in the archive are never deleted. The National Archives and Records Administration follows the ISADG model. A record is a member of a record series. The record is defined by a submission agreement, and its position in the record series is maintained over time. This is referred to as original arrangement. The record also has a retention and disposition schedule. Records may have a finite lifetime. Digital libraries are also concerned with preservation since the lifetime of a data collection is longer than the lifetime of the supporting technology. However, the presence of a file in the collection is determined by its usage, and the arrangement is based on the Dewey Decimal System. The continuum model was developed in Australia to recognize that records are frequently reused and repurposed. Thus, a record has a provenance defined by how it has been reused after it is deposited into the archives. The chain of reused records is preserved in contrast to the preservation of the record as a member of a static record series. Data grids can implement policies that control each of these preservation models. In particular, the first system that was capable of supporting the continuum model was the Storage Resource Broker data grid. The basic preservation properties that are maintained for a collection at NARA are authenticity, integrity, chain of custody, and original arrangement. Authenticity is demonstrated by proving that the record is what it is claimed to be and has not been altered. The provenance or source of the record is maintained to track which federal agency deposited the record under which record series. NARA examines every submitted record for compliance with the submission agreement. Integrity means the record has not been corrupted. A checksum created at the original deposition is still valid and can be verified. Chain of custody means that all storage locations where the record was stored can be tracked along with the persons who had administrative access to the record. Note that when NARA receives a record, NARA generates an archival information package from the submission information package. The chain of custody includes tracking the formation of the AIP from the SIP. Original arrangement or respect des fonds means that records are grouped by the entity that controlled the record submission. A federal agency may have multiple submission agreements, each managing submission to a distinct record series. The Open Archival Information System, OAIS, defines a standard for preservation environments for the context that should be created for each record and the structures that should be used for submission, storage, and retrieval. The record context includes representation information that can be interpreted by a knowledge community. This avoids the problem of defining the semantic terms used by each discipline. The knowledge community is supposed to be able to interpret the representation information. Note that the OAIS model does not define the policies and procedures that should be enforced by the archive. A submission information package, or SIP, contains all of the information needed to track authenticity, description, and representation information. An archival information package, or AIP, is the structure that contains the information from the SIP plus the administrative information generated by the archive. The administrative information may contain location of replicas, logs of integrity checks, and access event logs. A disposition information package, or DIP, provides access to the original information in the submission agreement. The content may be delivered in the original format or may need to be transformed to a modern format or may need to be delivered in a machine image that captures the environment needed to execute the original display application. These mechanisms correspond to transformative migration to convert to the modern format, or persistent object if the format remains unchanged. Persistent objects may be processed by an emulation system or through encapsulation of the original display application in an appropriate machine image. Digital libraries focus on discovery and access. The grouping of records is rearranged to correspond to a library standard such as the Dewey Decimal System. The descriptive information is cast into standards such as METS, Metadata Encoding and Transmission Standard, or the Dublin Core, which define explicit metadata attributes. Records are registered into a catalog to support searching and discovery. Note that a digital library does not need to address authenticity, chain of custody, or original arrangement. However, you can consider the preservation of the digital library itself. Reinstantiation of the digital library will require the ability to recreate the same arrangement, descriptive metadata, and access controls. Data grids can archive a collection, then instantiate the collection on new technology while preserving the arrangement, metadata, and access controls. Archivists in Australia noted that their records are reused by multiple agencies. In the United States, NERA tracks the users of records and has noted that the principal user is the agency that submitted the records. For NERA, any changes to a record are resubmitted in a new record series as a separately managed object. The Australian archivist wanted to track reuse of each record and link reused records back to the original record. This can be implemented as versions of a record, or through metadata that tracks provenance information, or through the workflows that were applied to the record. Take 7 minutes to complete exercise 33. Describe what you will need 20 years from now to understand the context and use of records saved by a research collaboration. Consider how to describe the record format. Consider how to provide a context for the record. Consider how to provide links to a knowledge community. Please load your paragraph into the Lifetime Library in the sub-collection class INLS 624 by the end of today's class. Please turn in homework assignment 5 by noon on Monday of the next week. Write a page on the following. Create policy templates for 3 preservation policies. Decide on what is needed to verify each preservation policy. Examples of preservation policies are in Chapter 5 of the Policy Templates Workbook.